Today, I'm going to show you a cheap, easy, and effective way to make your own 3D naturalistic foam backgrounds for arboreal enclosures. I use this process for my arboreal tarantula enclosures, but it will also work for other invertebrates, reptiles, or amphibians. Now, this particular enclosure that I'm building is for my giant day gecko. Now, first off, you're going to need to pick up a few things from the store. You'll need some great stuff expanding foam. I prefer either the pond and stone or the gaps and cracks version. You'll need some tubes of 100% silicone. You got to make sure it's just silicone, 100% silicone. Some disposable gloves, eye protection, and a mask. You'll also need a serrated steak knife, a Dremel with sanding attachment, isopropyl alcohol. You'll also need some dry substrate, moss, leaves, and some sand. Start off by wiping down all the glass with isopropyl alcohol, and then lay out your hardscape using painter's tape or gaffer's tape to hold them in place, as those tapes will not leave a sticky residue behind. Next, get your great stuff and start laying down the background. You want to make sure you completely cover the back. I prefer the look of the pond and stone as it does dry black, but it is about 3 times as expensive as the gaps and cracks. Get plenty around the pieces of wood at their anchor points so that they are secured into place. And keep in mind, this foam will expand about 3 times its original size. Once you have it all filled in, let it sit for about an hour so it can harden and begin to cure. Then flip your enclosure onto its side and secure any additional hardscape with your tape and start spraying in the foam, making sure to put plenty around the anchor points to hold the wood in place. I only go about 1/3 to 1/2 the distance from the back towards the front. This gives it a 3D look, but also allows for some side viewing. Again, let it sit for about an hour and then fill in any spaces that you missed. After it has begun to harden, flip the enclosure onto the other side and start the process again. It doesn't have to be perfect or symmetrical because we will be cutting it to shape once it's completely cured.
All right, so this is the final product. As you can see, the great stuff has really expanded about 3 to 5 times what it looked like initially. So it's something you always want to kind of keep in mind. Everything is really locked in there nicely, and what we're going to do is go through and cut out a lot of this stuff and really kind of make it look like rocks. I mean, look at that. That just shot up out of nowhere. So all of this is going to get leveled off, cut a lot of this down, and then once that's done, we'll silicone it and add the background substrate. And if you look down in there, you can kind of see in here there's a little bit, well, like they didn't go all the way back, so you can see through the glass there. I don't know if it's showing up on camera or not, but it's okay. I guess is what I'm saying, because we're going to shove a bunch of moss down in there. So that'll all be blocked. It'll be a nice little humid hide. We got a hide here. We got a basking spot up here for the UVB light. And then for the heat lamp, he'll have, or she, I should say, will have these 2 pieces there. Got a little bit of the foam on there, but that'll just rub right off. So let's get to cutting.
Take your serrated knife and start cutting out large chunks of foam. I cut the tops off the large balls I made towards the top to create ledges. Keep whittling away until the backdrop begins taking on a natural look. I like to cut it back so it is fairly thin, as that will maximize the available space in the enclosure. I try to cut back as much foam from around the hardscape as possible, so there are a lot of hiding places and retreats. But I make sure to leave enough around the anchor points so all the hardscape remains locked into place.
So I've done about all I can do here. You can see it's coming to shape pretty well. It looks a lot more like rocks instead of just a bunch of foams packed on top of each other. But you could really just kind of silicone it and make the backdrop as it is right now. It's pretty good. But I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to grab the Dremel, take this outside, and really add some details to really make it kind of pop a little bit better. So let's get the Dremel set up and get this guy moved outside.
Sanding down the foam makes a huge mess, so be sure to wear safety goggles and a mask to keep the foam out of your eyes, mouth, and lungs. I like to round off any sharp edges and taper the foam gradually towards the glass. Be careful not to touch the glass with the Dremel, as it can scratch or even crack the glass. I try and thin the foam out as much as possible to really maximize the space inside. I also sand into the ledges to give them a cup shape, so I can fill them with substrate, so plants can hopefully grow there. I spend a lot of time trying to fade the foam into the hardscape so it gives it a weathered look, like the wood is naturally coming out of the backdrop.
So now this is what the final product looks like. Or not the final, but after sanding everything down, you can see I've made it a lot thinner. It's not nearly as bulky. Try to round the edges, get rid of any of the sharp corners that I got from the knife, sanded any epoxy that was on any of this wood. Just tried to get the base up off so close to the bottom of the enclosure, so enough room for all of the bioactive substrate and everything you need for that. You can see there's a few places, it's hard to see without the light, but there's a few places where there's gaps or you can see through, but we're going to take silicone, put it all over this, and make a naturalistic background, so all that will be blocked up. One thing I didn't show on camera is there was a whole lot of dust. As you can see, like on the side of this glass, there's a lot of dust. I just grabbed my leaf blower and blew almost all of it out of there, so that's a nice clean surface to apply the silicone to. If you don't have a leaf blower, you can use pretty much anything like an air gun or a vacuum, shop vac on reverse. There's cans of air you can get, like you use to clean keyboards and things like that. So there's a lot of options. You don't have to use a leaf blower. I just happen to have one handy in my garage, and it worked really well blowing all of that out. So next step is to apply the silicone and put the substrate on the background.
For the substrate, I'm using a mix of cocoa fiber, jungle mix, sphagnum moss, dried leaves, and a little excavator clay and play sand. Then begin spreading the silicone over the foam in small sections. The silicone will begin to dry very quickly, and if you try to cover the entire background, by the time you're done, the section you started from may already be too cured to really hold the substrate. After you get a small section completely covered in silicone, dump a few handfuls of substrate on that area and gently press it down to really work it into the silicone. It is important to make sure you are wearing gloves during the process and only use silicone in a well-ventilated area, and even consider wearing a mask as the fumes can be very strong. You want to use enough silicone so the entire area is fully covered, but not too thick, because the thicker the layer, the longer it will take to fully cure and for the fumes to dissipate completely. Once all three sides have been covered and dried, use a shop vac and clean out any substrate that has fallen to the bottom. Next, I add a layer of hydro balls for the false bottom, then the screen mesh separator. For this particular enclosure, I use a few bags of ABG mix I had left over from my dart frog enclosure build, some reptisoil, sphagnum moss, dried leaves, a bio shot from the Bio Dude, and some cleanup crew cuisine from Josh's Frogs. Then water it all down and mix it up and continue until the substrate is completely saturated. I also add some reptisoil on the ledges up top for some small plants. Now it is time to add any decorations, additional hardscape, plants, and a water bowl.
All right, and here we are about a month later. It's had a little bit of time for everything to kind of grow in. You can see the day geckos hiding way back up in there. But you can see this pothos plant has started to grow up pretty well. We've got another plant kind of hiding in back there. This one's growing all right. We got that guy back there growing. And of course, this big plant has probably grown up about 1 inch. Now, all of the plants that I planted up here in these little ledges died off. First, I thought it was because they weren't getting enough light, but apparently she has just been like digging them out, knocking them down, because if you look on the ground, you can see that they're all kind of growing down there now. So hopefully they'll keep growing and start growing up the back and really kind of make it look nice. As you can see along the edges, what I did, I made sure that the silicone went over the edge of the actual foam background, which is, kind of helps seal it, keep it watertight so water doesn't get trapped back there, but also helps kind of secure it to the back a little bit better. And then I pushed some sphagnum moss down into the silicone to kind of give it a nice natural edge. And over here, I just used the sand and the substrate to kind of make that look a little bit more natural. Another thing I did that I didn't actually film is you can kind of see it along here on the sides. Like, I really don't like the way the great stuff looks once it's cured, especially from the back. It's just this like ugly yellowish color and it's all bubbly and stuff. So I got some black acrylic paint and just kind of painted the sides and the back to kind of hide that. Also have it hooked up to the same misting system that the dart frogs are on. So it gets plenty of humidity, and also, I'm not going to show you that yet. That's for a future video.
This process is simple, but it does take a few days or even a few weeks to let everything properly cure. I have a few more videos in the works that show alternate methods for building terrestrial enclosures, so keep an eye out for those videos coming out soon. If you want to learn more about how I set up bioactive enclosures, I have quite a few videos on that. I will link that playlist right up here. And if you missed my last video, I will link it right there. As always, I appreciate you watching. Subscribe if you want to see more. Hit that like button to help get this video recommended, and I will see you next Tuesday.